and I now give the floor to the Representative of Algeria.
Thank you, Madam President. Please allow me to thank Under-Secretary General Mrs. Nakamitsu for her valuable briefing. President, the ongoing war in Ukraine that has engulfed the Russian territories rages on. Its effects continue to weigh on the peoples of the region at large. The losses of innocent human lives, including among children and women, have been on the rise since the outbreak of the conflict. The suffering of civilians, including the injured and the displaced, mounts. Many now dream of a warm shelter where they can seek refuge from the harsh winter conditions. Still, this conflict's economic repercussions continue to reverberate not only in the region but across the world, mainly in developing countries whose peoples have been largely affected by the energy and food crises. Unfortunately, the logic of confrontation and escalation, regional and international wrangling, and polarization continue to prevail, affecting the course of this conflict that will enter its third year. Algeria has repeatedly warned that such a logic will fuel tension, thus plunging the region into a quagmire of endless conflicts and crises. This is the sad reality on the ground. Tension has been fueled by the flow of weapons and ammunition to conflict zones, thus fomenting the war and its risks and steering us away from a peaceful political process that can lead to a peaceful settlement of the conflict. I would like to reaffirm the following points. Firstly, the ongoing escalation and bloody armed confrontation remain a grave cause of concern for Algeria. We condemn again the violations of international law, including international humanitarian law. We call again on both parties to exercise restraint, de-escalate, respect their international obligations, and protect civilians as a top priority. Targeting civilians and civilian infrastructure is unacceptable under any circumstances. This is prohibited under international humanitarian law. Secondly, we express our deep concern about the use of lethal and destructive ammunition and weapons in conflict zones, which was recently reinforced by the use of modern, medium, and long-range missiles in the Ukrainian and Russian territories. We call on both parties to ensure that these weapons do not fall into the hands of criminal, terrorist, and extremist groups that often use such weapons in hostile acts against defenseless civilians to exercise hegemony. Thirdly, we call again on both parties to prioritize dialogue and diplomacy and to engage in inclusive and constructive negotiations away from politicization. The war and clashes have had limited impact on advancing progress towards peace. The time has thus come to give diplomacy a genuine chance to achieve a just and lasting peace. This peace must be rooted in the principles and purposes of the Charter of the UN, which we all uphold, and must take into consideration the legitimate security considerations or concerns of both parties. The international community must step up its diplomatic efforts at all levels to create conditions conducive for negotiations, to defuse the war and achieve peace and security in the region. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Algeria for their statement.